Good morning. You're listening to Central Wisconsin's 24-hour information station, AM 1320 WFHR. It's time now for the Morning Magazine, brought to you by Comfort Air Heating, Cooling, Plumbing. Now, with the Morning Magazine, here's Carl Hilke.
Thank you, Jerry, and good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's edition of the Morning Magazine on AM 1320 and streaming live at WFHR.com. And we also welcome our friend Jesse from Wisconsin Rapids Community Media. He's here because it's time for our monthly visit with Wisconsin Rapids Mayor Zach Vruwink. And if you're watching on TV or online, you're going, that's not the same studio. That's because we're in the recording studio, because we had to do this in advance to accommodate a very busy schedule for his honor. With that, we welcome the mayor of the city of Wisconsin Rapids, Mayor Vruwink. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Carl, and good morning to our listeners.
Okay, so the big storm. Went and checked the NOAA weather and their how much we got? 15.4.
That had to be a record, from what I heard.
Yeah.
So a single event. That's incredible.
Okay. So, how did the city fare?
Well, we got ahead of it, right? We watched the models, of which the various forecasts that come out, and our Public Works director, as well as his staff, really watched to plan for staff availability. While we have a strong crew, not everybody's always available when we have these events. So making sure that we get ahead and we start planning for their schedule. So from a scheduling standpoint, I feel we did really well. We got through our primary streets, our highways, and our collector streets, and then we were able to hit our residential streets late enough into the storm that we were able to capture a good portion of the snow that had fallen, right? It was a very long snow event. And then we came in the next night and did more cleanup, another round, and then the third day, we did downtown streets. So while it was a major snow event, when we turn over the calendar for the new year, we turn over for a new budget, right? So we're starting off with fresh budget numbers for this year. Our only hope is we don't have too many more of these major snow events yet this first part of the winter or in the tail end of this calendar year. Otherwise, we're going to run into some potential budget challenges. But we do retain previous year's snow removal account in reserves, so that way we've got ample dollars for snow removal. One of the problems all snow removal teams with that storm faced was the fact that it was near blizzard conditions because of the heavy snow and strong winds. Right. That means, and some municipalities and counties pulled their crews off the road because it was just too dangerous and it wasn't doing any good. What was the situation here? Well, we didn't seem to have as much of an issue with that. Because we've got our full crew that we dispatch on events like that, we start with a smaller crew in the morning to keep all the highways open, and then we call in the rest of the crew for residential streets. So residential streets always, people will say, well, why my street on where my house is didn't get plowed? Well, that's because we have to keep the priority streets attended to and clean, and then we bring in the crews to deal with that. It takes 12 hours for us to plow the entire city. So we can't prematurely start that, or we're going to have to wait another period of time for us to come back and do that. And residents, of course, don't want too much snow on their residential streets, especially if they're driving two-wheel drive or cars. I think that's just kind of an education thing that folks need to know, that it's based upon our crew. We can't run our crew beyond a 12-hour shift sometimes. I mean, they do work overtime in cases, but they need rest too. And so we want to make sure our operators are safe as well as those that are on the street so that there's not any incidents. Unfortunately, there weren't any incidents. It went off without a hitch. And you want to make sure to hit the most traveled streets. Right. That's the priority. Exactly. And then you go about, after the most traveled streets, getting the side streets and everything else. That's right. That's right. And of course, none of us like all the snow that gets plowed in our driveways after we clean those driveways. I know I've got an SUV, all-wheel drive, and I got stuck getting out of my driveway the other day, and I thought, I don't want to deal with this morning. I'm going to deal with it at night, and I paid the price because it took me a little bit to get out of my driveway, but that's the price we pay when you get 15 inches of snow, right? Unprecedented amount of snow in a single event. Okay. So now, I guess, last question about this, and when it comes to reducing the snowbanks, right. We go in and
have those operations? When do they usually start?
Well, we've done the downtown areas. So those are the areas that don't have any snow storage, right? There's a sidewalk to the back of the curb, so there isn't really any storage there. And there's oftentimes limited visibility in those cases because there's not a lot of separation. So those operations have been done. As time permits, we'll go on 8th Street and do some of the removal out on more of the heavily traveled roads. And then we always remind folks to take care of their fire hydrants too, because in case of a fire instance, as well as the access to their front doors. A lot of folks, myself included, sometimes doesn't always give the priority to the areas of our entrances to our homes and our properties that we should, especially in the case if there was a fire. Emergency crews need to be able to get into your homes or your places of business. So we encourage folks to clear those walk areas.
And on behalf of all the postal workers, make sure you clean the area so they can drive up by your post box.
Or walk up to wherever your mailbox is. Yeah, you don't want to get a little note that says I didn't deliver your mail because you didn't clear your area. That's certainly you want to provide for those.
Okay, let's move on to economic development. The big announcement, Matalco. Announcing that they are coming to Wisconsin Rapids to the shovel-ready site over in the East Commerce Center, a Canadian company. They're going to build a new billet manufacturing facility.
That's right.
And here, how long was this? I know this is, I had heard rumblings about this. You had indicated, a variety of people had told me, Carl, there's something in the pipeline. And that's been like 2 years or something like that. So I want us to give a little picture for our listeners about how long this process was before they arrived and made that announcement.
Well, really the process started early in my tenure. In 2013, the state came out with a program called Certified Sites. And early in learning about that process and the value that was going to bring cities like ours, we needed to participate, or we weren't simply going to be listed alongside cities around the state that might be come to people's mind a little bit easier than a place like Wisconsin Rapids. So the council at the time pursued this process of certification for the property that we spoke about, the Rapids East Commerce Center. And so we were successful in doing that. And basically what that did, it was a long, extraneous process that got that property shovel ready. So a developer or a site selector could say, here's a piece of property in a community, Wisconsin Rapids, that's served by rail. It's got this natural gas capacity, this water capacity, this sewer, this electricity, all of the basics. And so that, I believe, I really place our participation in that project, and the decision that we made, as incredible, as the deal maker really for this project to become a reality today, because they would have spent 6 to 9 months doing that analysis. And oftentimes companies don't want to waste that time. They don't have the time to waste anyway, nor do they want to waste the expense. So had we not done that, I don't believe we would have been as successful. So March of last year, formally, we became in discussions with the site selector. We had a couple of other prospects before March of last year, March of 2018. They didn't come to fruition. Limitations with labor force, limitations in housing, limitations in infrastructure. All as reasons, property, even the parcel was kind of small, even though it's 50 acres, it was still a bit small for some of the other projects. So we hung with these guys, and we got in touch with them. In fact, the site selector got in touch with me, kind of a strange call one day, and followed up with an email, and you never know how real it is until you get further along in the process. So midsummer last year, we engaged with the company formally to understand who they were, what are they about, because you hate to invest too much time not really knowing, is this a type of business that'll work really well, that's compatible in our community, that's compatible with the neighborhood. Not that you can be too picky and choosy, don't get me wrong, but we were very excited as we got engaged with them and we understood what they were about. And we knew that we were competing against sites in Minnesota and Michigan and potentially Illinois, and sites in Wisconsin. They were very interested in southeastern Wisconsin. And we made the pitch, available workforce, really the hard work ethic that our community is so, in the Midwest generally, but Wisconsin and central Wisconsin is known for, the proximity to Mid-State Technical College, as the crow flies, it's a mile and a half from the site. They have strong relationships with the technical college and in other states where they do business. So all of those things were very interesting to them. And then when they came on site for the first and second time, they wanted the tours of the community, right? Where do we do business? Where do we go for lunch? Where do we,
Stuff
recreate?
we've talked about.
Absolutely. What is life like in Wisconsin Rapids? And so we have that stuff prepared because we do a lot of tours for prospective employees, for businesses. Let's say it's a provider at the hospital. What do those folks get introduced to when they're coming to Wisconsin Rapids for the first time? It's very similar for the business community as well, because those folks are people too, right? They're maybe representing a business, but they want to know what life is like. So we spent, it'd be almost a year from a month from now, so 11 months that we spent working with this prospect in particular. It goes to show it's years in the making, and we all want to bring business to this community like nothing else. But you have to be disciplined. You have to be patient. Something I don't have a lot of sometimes is patience, nor does the resident population. I share that with them. We want to make things happen quicker. But this project really came as a result of serious discipline, investing in the community, in ourselves, confidence. I mean, as they talked to people in our community, they wanted to know how confident were we in the future of Wisconsin.
Who did they meet with? Did they meet with members of the CVB, or did they have, and the chamber? Or?
Yeah, Mid-State Technical College, of course. When we took them to lunch, at Jennings, we run into the people that we see all the time, and we just, always introduce them as who they were and who they represented. And I'll tell you, they were very pleased when they were introduced to folks that they felt that culturally there was a fit here. When you would take them to lunch at Jennings, they could just feel the vibe of the community, and I think that was a positive for them. They also have customers in the Midwest and in Wisconsin that they are familiar with, so they know Wisconsin Rapids. They also saw an opportunity to be a part of something here that many people that are just coming to the community are telling us. We're very close to all of this, right? We take for granted really all of the things that are happening, right? And I'll include myself in that. But these folks have said we want to be a part of what will become the next in the new Wisconsin Rapids, and that there's nothing more exciting than hearing that from somebody from another country, much less another industry or another business that's not currently here.
Yeah, they looked at us and said, this is going to be a happening place, and we have a chance to play a role in that. And for any business, that's exciting.
That's right. The president cited that. I mean, they cited that in all their news releases to their customers, that when they announced in Wisconsin that it was going to be in Wisconsin and in Wisconsin Rapids, they outlined exactly the amenities and things that this community offers or will offer should we be successful in pursuing them as reasons why Wisconsin Rapids was the best place for them.
So now that they have made that decision, what happens next? How do we get the shovel in the ground and everything else? I mean, we're still, there are other steps that have to happen.
That's right. So March 14th, we're speculating will be the day that they'll come to the community, come to the city formally, and to the city council and present all of their plans. So that's the technical details of the plant. We've long known all the exciting, flashy details. $80 million investment, 80 jobs, family-sustaining full-time wages, average wages around $25 an hour. So skilled and unskilled. So there'll be folks making less than that. There'll be folks making more. But really their first phase, as they've called it, plans will be fully presented to the city and to the city council. And then what will happen is the process always is where we have a developer's agreement. So those are, we'll agree to sell you the property if you do certain things, right? We're not just going to give them the property and then hope they do something with it, right? We have to have agreements that solidify that. It's also in a tax increment finance district. That's one of the incentives or the tools we used to make this possible. So a number of months ago, at a public meeting, we called what we call a joint review board. So that's the other taxing jurisdictions, the county, the city, the school district, and the technical college. All four are represented on what we call a joint review board. And I'm the chairperson of it, called that meeting and said, hey, we have a chance to develop some city property. In Wisconsin, tax increment finance is a vehicle, a venue that we use to help financially make projects happen. And they all agreed. We need jobs in this community. We need new investment. We're willing to forego some of the tax increment that would come as a result of their investment to help finance aspects of the project. So the company really needs a couple of things. They've got major electrical uses. They also have rail needs, natural gas. They're a big natural gas user. So those types of amenities come at a cost. And so we said that we're willing to help offset rail and use some state programs that the city can apply for to help make those things happen. So that happened a couple months ago. We'll have another meeting to formally agree once all the details have been made public. And then we'll also talk about the incentives. So on the 14th of March, they'll present those things. And then the city council will still have to approve it, right? This is not a done deal from that standpoint. They've only expressed their great interest in the community in belief that this site will work for them. We still need to close the deal.
Okay, so in terms of the Common Council, what have you been hearing?
They've been incredibly supportive. We all have our disagreements, and it's good to be civil and have healthy disagreements and differences. On this one, this has been one of them that's brought us all together. So it's been a neat project to be a part of because they all see the vision. They all see the work that city staff and I and themselves have put in to invest to make this project a reality. So I think, barring any unforeseen things that come up, I think we're going to have a successful project here.
And then if everything goes according to plan, right, when would the groundbreaking be held? When would we all be gathering there for a groundbreaking ceremony?
Well, much of the work has been simultaneous or concurrent in the sense that they've selected a general contractor. They've been working with local firms already on getting cost estimates. That's probably where the rumblings got out. If you've got an $80 million project and you're a HVAC or a mechanical company, somebody brings the plans to you and says, give us an estimate, a bid for this project. That information starts getting shared.
Well, that's
right?
it. That's
yeah.
exactly.
So the last 3 months, that's kind of what happened. They've been doing all their estimating. They had to get their project cost at about $80 million. They were above that for a while, but their corporation said, it's not really a project until we can get some of those costs in line. So they've done most of their estimating, and then we believe they'll break ground this spring. So barring, snow removal. I mean, they can do a lot of work and a lot of
they're Canadian.
Moving.
They're used to.
That's right, exactly. But you can thaw the ground to do all sorts of groundbreaking. So we believe April, May timeframe they'll be breaking ground on the project.
And then, of course, everybody, we've heard about the jobs. They're feeling about the workforce here. Are they going to be able to fulfill that workforce here, or are they going to be recruiting outside the area?
Well, because the project is about 18 months from official opening and ramp up, they're going to be starting to work with high schools. That building the pipeline of high school students and getting them into apprenticeships now will be critical for them to fill the workforce that they need.
That's cool.
It is, right? Very foresight. They've done this before, right? So they're very, very smart in how they do it. But they're very interested in using Midstate as a core part of that process. That apprenticeships take time, right? But maybe there's some accelerated programming that they can offer. They're going to hire some staff right away, to get underway, whether it's general management or some of the other supervisory stuff, just to make sure that they're delivering on this other stuff while construction is happening. So you'll see some hiring happen fairly soon, but most of it will happen as the plant gets under construction and near completion. And
folks have been wondering, well, what kind of a plant is this? Going to be a plant with emissions, or what will it be like?
Well, because we don't want to repeat history around projects in this community, we wanted to understand some of that information right up front. So we did ask those questions. Fortunately, they have replica plants or very similar plants in Ohio and potentially, I think, one near Kentucky somewhere that have met federal standards, EPA emission standards, as well as their local state standards. In Wisconsin, we don't have any further standards that go beyond what the state requires. So the state, they've already been working with the DNR on permitting. That's going to be the longest permitting process, as we understand any air quality stuff. But our understanding is, because they're using natural gas, they're not using coal or other dirty fuel sources, that most of their emissions and everything are contained, and they scrub things and make sure that they're a good neighbor in the communities in which they do business. And that's the difference in foundry type activities that are 21st century versus those that were maybe grew up under different federal standards when it comes to environmental concerns.
Okay. And I would imagine you've been in contact with state officials about, I'm sure they're pretty excited as well.
Yeah, they were brought in very early because sometimes, well, we saw it with Foxconn, right? Or you see it with many other projects.
Right.
A lot of these projects don't get done without some sort of state participation. The state did provide an incentive, a manufacturing tax credit that will be awarded provided that they meet certain objectives. That's the same thing with us, right? The developers agreement will ensure that we're not giving them a cash grant without them producing certain things. So the state was involved, and they'll be sharing what that information is as they go forward. But really, there's some financial reviews that needs to happen yet to make sure that they say they are what they've said they are. And so I think that's the next step from the state review.
And this might be a curveball question, but given all the improvements we've made, and in large part because of Sand Valley, but also because and it has created now a regional airport that is very attractive for business in general. How much did that play a role at all? The fact that they can fly in from Toronto very easily?
I think it was a discovery they made when we were here having lunch, and I had said, what's generally your corporation's mode of travel? And they do use commercial service, out of Mosinee. That's how they flew in the first couple of times we met with them. This last time they flew privately and in their corporate mode of travel. And while they didn't use the Rapids Airport, they used a neighboring airport because they were visiting customers. They were very excited about the fact that they have an airport right in literally 10 minutes from their plant, that they'll be able to come in and meet with folks, meet with customers, meet with suppliers, their contractors and all that sort of thing. So it was a discovery they made after they had done their search. It was not a criteria. A lot of folks will say, well, we need an airport within a certain radius. It's sort of a cherry on the top when they've got one right in their back door.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it's our monthly visit with Wisconsin Rapids Mayor Zach Vruwink here on the Morning Magazine. Back with more right after this.
Good morning and welcome back to the Morning Magazine, presented by Comfort Air Heating, Cooling, Plumbing. It's time for part 2. Once again, here's Carl Hilke.
Thanks. Welcome back to the Morning Magazine, our monthly visit with Wisconsin Rapids Mayor Zach Vruwink. We also welcome viewers watching the program on the fine website of the Wisconsin Rapids Community Media or on their local public access channel. Jesse's here making sure I look halfway decent for radio, for TV, I should say. But we just talked about Matalco. That leads to some of the other economic development projects that are going on, and people want to know about a Triangle project.
Right.
Where are we with that? Are we getting closer to a resolution and getting that thing started?
Well, as we've talked with listeners in the past, we still remain, and the developer remains in a property acquisition mode that acquiring the remaining bar, Four Stools Short, as well as the other properties that are around that is necessary in order for us to move forward with the original intent, that if we scale it back, we're not going to have as much of an impact. It actually may cost more, even though the project will be a little bit less because you're working around various things. And parking is, as we've talked on a whole variety of topics, parking is really critical. We want to get that right. Whether we're working with the courthouse and the county across the street, they have a lot of needs, whether it's maybe exploring some of the jail pieces and the Justice Center components, that we want to make sure that we can have enough adequate parking for all of the users downtown to support ultimately what we hope is a more thriving business community and governmental entities and all that coexisting downtown. So the developer still is in discussions with those property owners. We don't have anything to report today, but as we talked with Matalco, they were very interested to know what were our housing needs, what were our unmet needs, and what was the city doing to address them. So they were very excited about the concept with the triangle, and the concept still remains unchanged. The developer still remains engaged, and we sure hope that we can get that property acquisition underway, or the reality is it's going to have to be a 2020 project.
What would be a 2020 project? Oh, yeah, that would be the year that...
Yeah.
Now, I know at some point, if you're running into a roadblock, you have the ultimate hammer, if it were.
Yeah.
And because it is a TIF district.
That's right. Yeah, and the TIF does have blighted properties, hence why we did the property demolition and acquisition that we did do. Yeah, there are some tools available to us. We didn't want to exercise them because they can be messy, they can be expensive. I'm hopeful now that some developments have happened with ownership that there may be some opportunity now for us to acquire them without having to bring everyone through a protracted legal battle or something. But I can't say for sure. We're just very optimistic that we all can come together for the benefit of the tax base, benefit of the housing stock, and really the local economy in the entire city.
One project that's well underway and everyone can see it is the YMCA Boys and Girls Club project on the west side.
That's right.
Downtown. How are things going from the city standpoint?
Going well. It's been interesting to watch. My office is right across the street from that project, so every day and then every week I can notice there's improvements. I mean, they're putting up steel this week, and so the YMCA portion of it's starting to take shape. And I think what we're hearing and seeing from the business community around there, or prospective businesses, is that there's a sense of reality that sets in. This project has been proposed and it's, they're doing a groundbreaking. But until you start seeing a lot of things happen, do people start understanding, wow, this is really happening? So that's exciting because as we saw with the B's Tap House, Mr. B's Tap House that'll be opening actually very soon, they had confidence in the downtown and to open a business, to take a storefront that was previously vacant. There's another business that'll be opening downtown and they're going to be announcing. I know they just told us about their plans. They bought the property right next to the Holly Rocks bar there. Just kind of a boutique style business. So it's exciting to see a lot of these storefronts that were long vacant become occupied by businesses that we always in community planning talk about activating the sidewalks, getting people walking downtown, getting people out and about. And these types of businesses certainly do that.
And the type of businesses that make money doing that are the ones that have the vision to see forward.
That's right.
Okay, right now, people are going, why are you doing this? Wait. Come back in a couple of years.
That's right.
You'll understand.
Yeah.
And then everybody's trying to get in.
That's right.
And it's too late.
It's too late and it might be too expensive, right? And I think that's the early adopters. Now there's always a risk in early adoption.
It's like buying stock.
That's right. That's right. If you see the vision and there's enough certainty around it, and that's why it's so important for us to deal with Riverwall and then ultimately the riverbank improvements that we've been making, that I've long said it, and of course people have place their trust and faith in at least my view and in the information that we've shared about it, that there is an absolute return on those types of investments. It may not be immediate, but it will be over the course of the life of those improvements that we're always going to say, I'm glad we did that. And, unfortunately it takes time and we all have to be, again, patient like we were in the case of the Matalco and the business recruitment that we were so successful in doing.
Well, when you see one project happen, you understand the reasons why it happened. Doesn't it, if people are listening and learning, then they realize, okay, patience is a virtue.
That's right. That's right. And government, I agree, government shouldn't take uncalculated risks. It shouldn't be out there willy-nilly with taxpayer dollar because it's our money, right?
Right.
But in a community like Wisconsin Rapids that's had its challenges, that economically needs to be more diverse, that we need to be introducing new types of sectors and different edges in our own kind of our ability to be competitive, a different edge around what makes ourselves unique. Those types of investments help leverage that and unlock those types of potential. And, so again, we can't be out there too far ahead and too willy-nilly, but heck, I'll be the first one to admit the investments we've made have already started to show fruits of their labor.
Okay. I want to talk about the East Riverbank project and what's going to be happening this year.
Yeah, so Veterans Park and Mead Rapids View Parks will see the improvements. Primarily, we're looking at addressing the river wall, so we're going to be doing tuck pointing in that river wall section by Veterans Park and Mead Rapids View to ensure that there aren't washout, there isn't kind of a sinkhole potential being created there. The river wall, as we've talked before, is 100 years old or more in some sections. So maintaining that asset's really important. Then, of course, there's this secondary benefit, the beautiful park spaces that we have adjacent to that. We've long heard people want more seating for things like Lunch by the River and some of the performances that happen in Veterans Park. So one of the neat improvements will be concrete benches that are actually built into the hill. So if people want to see the designs, they're on the city's website. But Wausau Tile out of Wausau is actually the vendor on the concrete precast seating. It's kind of sculptural. It's really, really cool. I think it's going to be neat when it's all done. And then we've got a balcony that'll be over the river wall. That'll all be beginning this summer. We don't have a time frame on it because we haven't put it to bid yet. We're very, very close to letting the project for bids, and then we'll know, is it going to be an early summer or late summer project?
That balcony, is that something that could be leased or people could rent for receptions and the like?
That's the idea. Is we wanted to create something interesting there. We know Veterans Park is one of our heaviest used parks, especially on the river, that we create an interesting feature that folks can, maybe for private events and parties, have access to. And yes, it will be just like any other park facility. That's our intent. Of course, we still have to figure out exactly how that'll work and the details behind it, but that's the intent.
What about overall access to the river in terms of for recreational stuff like canoeing and everything?
Yeah. Well, there are limitations given the unique cutoff wall, that it's a very steep wall. We're going to be preserving access, through the rock outcroppings that are in Veterans Park. There won't be any other stairs introduced, around there. But that was really the intent of the first phase of the East Riverbank project, is that folks that want to get to the river and want to carry their canoe or kayak can now do so in an even easier fashion than even with that kayak canoe launch than before. The kayak canoe launch was a great project, and unfortunately, there was so much erosion around it. It was very difficult to maintain. Now with a new river wall, folks can carry their canoe and kayak right to the river wall and lay it against the wall and sit in it. There's not a lot of current in some sections right there, just the way the river flows. So it'll be very exciting to see how people use the river going forward.
Of course, that part, east side, downtown, major reconstruction of East Grand Avenue.
Yes.
What's the latest in terms of the planning for that?
Yeah, so we're getting close to releasing some phasing about the project. If folks have really strong interest about what's going on with East Grand Avenue, we do have a website set up on the city engineering page. So go to the city website, go to departments, and then you can go to engineering, and there should be a link under there for East Grand Avenue. That project then will begin in phases right when the spring construction season starts. And because it's a state project, the street surfacing and the streetscaping, most of that will all be done by the state contractor. The underground utilities, the water, the sewer, and then the electrical work will all be done either by the city or by the city's electrical utility. And so we ask folks for their patience during this time. It's going to be a very big project, but it's going to be another signature. I think once the project is done, we're going to look at that and say, wow, what an improvement. So many additional parking spaces up and down East Grand, all the way to 8th Street. Places near Taco John's where there isn't street parking today will have street parking for the first time. We're going to go down to 2 travel lanes, one in each direction for the car, and then bicycle lanes that folks that want to bike downtown to the trail system or use the bike share bikes will be able to do so in a little bit safer manner.
Okay. So it's going to give a whole different feel to the downtown. We're talking about a design that's going to encourage people to come to the area.
That's right. And we're working on some kind of late additions, but we continue to hear from folks. We want to offer some more space for creativity. And so at Park and Rec Commission this month, we met to talk about bringing about space for sculptures, that public art creates a unique interest, that when we host and then bid for conferences and events, they ask for what are the interesting things you can do outside of the meeting time, right? They want to have their people get outside and meet each other and interact and network. And so we're looking at kind of some creative ways to involve the Convention and Visitors Bureau, the Chamber of Commerce, the Park and Rec Commission, and the Cultural Center on how do we bring some public art elements to our public spaces. So perhaps on the East Riverbank or near Demetz Park. Demetz has that beautiful shade structure, which is an architectural feature, right? So how they're coming this spring will be a call for entries for folks to submit their ideas for a public art, maybe a big sculpture that they've welded. Also on East Grand Avenue, benches that are actually created by residents that have a unique idea to pitch. So there'll be a process for that. We're going to announce that as we go forward this spring, but I'm pretty excited about not just doing something standard, something that you can buy out of a catalog, but something that reflects the unique creativity of Wisconsin Rapids. It's
our monthly visit with Wisconsin Rapids Mayor Zach Vruwink. Take one more break and then be back to wrap up our monthly visit with the mayor. And welcome back to our final segment today with Wisconsin Rapids Mayor Zach Vruwink. And Your Honor, during the break I just showed you 6 Aspirus hospitals named among the nation's top 100 rural hospitals in the nation by the Chartist Center for Rural Health. And one of those, Aspirus Riverview Hospital in Wisconsin Rapids. And on February 26th, we're going to be celebrating their new emergency department. I just had the chance to interview their director and about the cutting edge, how unique this thing is. But this, when you talk about selling a community,
right,
like you did with Matalco, healthcare is huge. To have cutting edge healthcare and something that ranks among the nation's top, that's invaluable, isn't it?
Absolutely. And it's invaluable, and I think in the sense that when somebody asks about the community, they ask about your schools, they ask about public amenities and that, but they also ask where can they get their care? How far do they have to travel for care? And the really neat thing is that Aspirus has really doubled down and been true to their word about the investments that they planned to make here at the Aspirus Riverview Clinic and the hospital here, but also just the fact that they continue to seek extreme high standards for the quality of which they offer, and I think we just saw that with the opening of a state-of-the-art birthing center. Walking through that birthing center is just incredible, and just to hear the number of families that come to Wisconsin Rapids, not necessarily that are living in the Wisconsin Rapids area, but now are coming here to have their babies because they want to have their babies in the best possible environment. It helps with recovery, helps with all sorts of things during a very, really exciting time for families in their lives. So, and then obviously the emergency department, as you mentioned, when people are at their worst, we need to make sure that we can provide them our best, right? And Aspirus' best in terms of caring for people. So it's really exciting to have a hospital like that based in our city. We know that there's an economic development element to having a strong hospital in a community, especially as they continue to add services. The birthing center as well as the emergency department were really part of phase 1. And we're very excited to know that they're planning for phase 2 and working through some preliminary designs of what they hope to do in phase 2. And so all of that will be coming out as they finish their process. But really, it's amazing the $20 to $25 million that they've invested already in that first phase 1, not to mention with the addition of cardiac and cardiovascular services as well as the behavioral health clinic. Folks that may be struggling with mental health issues or addiction or other challenges, that they're able to now get care at Aspirus Riverview. Otherwise, they would have had to travel. They would have had to go to places like Wausau or even over to Eau Claire for treatment centers. Okay,
and that campus continues to develop. I mean, it's becoming a major medical complex.
That's right. The old manor site has become a construction staging zone, right? But I can share with confidence that at some point in the future they're going to have plans for that property too. So it's pretty exciting.
It's Common Council this month.
That's right.
Some of the big items that they've been dealing with.
Well, we want to acknowledge a whole host of promotions and oaths of office that'll happen within the police department. So want to acknowledge retired Deputy Chief Randy Johns, who served our city admirably. He has now retired, and Brian Kriskowski has taken his place. We also had Lieutenant Sergeant and 2 new police officers that also will be welcome to the department. In the case of the fire department, we had a couple of promotions and 1 new firefighter, so that's exciting. And then there's also kind of the routine business. We've talked about Bird City, and so we're going to be, in the past, we're going to acknowledge a resolution for International Migratory Bird Day in the city. And then kind of routine business, the Aquatic Center. We've talked a bit about that in the past. We held an update in January where we had a $2.5 million match offered to the project. We continue to meet with donors to talk about their interests. So donors include both business and industry as well as foundations. And I can confidently say they're very excited and interested in the project. Donors want a project that isn't too far off, right? They're not going to necessarily, and I would put myself in their shoes, I'm not going to invest in a project that may sit around for 2-3 years before they get a shovel in the ground. The exciting thing is in early January, we got our state plans back with a stamp on them. And that stamp means you're shovel ready for the project when the financing happens.
Okay, that's awesome. So that's very good news.
It is. And so provided that we get the fundraising in order, the city council is discussing how might we be able to get the project underway. Every year the project doesn't get built, it faces a 3% cost increase, right? Just contractors increase their prices, costs of doing business increase. So we don't want to have another cost increase without having a shovel in the ground. So we're presently talking with city staff about what happens if we were to temporarily cover some of the cost for certain aspects of construction, or are there donors that are willing to pre-fund some of the construction costs before they make their gift a reality? So just some creative thinking around that, because ultimately the pool isn't going to happen otherwise, right? And so we need to continue to be diligent in that regard.
New administration in Madison. I know you're very involved with the league.
Yeah.
And municipalities. Any discussions so far with the new administration? And is there a chance we could maybe invite the new governor to our community to show him, because he has made a rural economic development one of his top items of his agenda. I would think this would be a good city for him to check out.
Absolutely, especially a city that's regaining confidence in itself and reinvesting and all the while having many state law changes as it relates to how cities are administered. I think we certainly have extended already an invitation to him and Lieutenant Governor to be in Wisconsin Rapids. Actually, at the Matalco announcement, we extended them the invitation. Unfortunately, it didn't align with their calendars, but we fully expect that as spring comes around that they'll be making their way through Wisconsin Rapids. As of this airing, the governor will have spoken to the League of Municipalities at the convening that I'll be at. And so we're very interested to see his state budget.
That's the biggie.
Right. We're very hopeful and optimistic that cities are funded in a lot of ways. Property taxes also funded via a lot of state aid. And the state aid comes in a variety of forms: transportation aids, direct shared revenue payments. There's a lot of talk right now about the state surplus. And the two parties really debating how should we use that surplus. Should we buy tax cuts with it, or should we fund other programs that may have not been funded to adequate levels? So as a city leader, we're advocating that some of that money go into shared revenue. And shared revenue is the payment that the city receives from the state to fund its operations. And our shared revenue payments have not increased at levels since 2007. So one of the league priorities, and we're certainly aligned with that the governor consider an increase in payments to cities to help accomplish infrastructure maintenance and infrastructure reconstruction and improvements, and those amenities that are quality life, right? That keeping funding levels flat doesn't help us accomplish our goals, and certainly doesn't help improve the state as we're trying to attract talent and young families to move to these communities that are not your more common communities like a Madison, Appleton, or a Milwaukee for people to move to.
And you're in a unique position because you have two key Republican lawmakers representing the city, so you can kind of lobby both sides of the aisle.
Absolutely, and that's what the exciting part of a nonpartisan position is. I can support various initiatives on both sides, and when I really advocate that, especially as we're talking about tax cuts, and there's both sides squabbling about how to accomplish that we really think about those tax cuts that are promoting growth and promoting consumer spending. That families that have had really flat wages for a while may need a break to be able to catch up, pay off some debt, maybe pay down and get caught up on their other obligations, and ultimately to spend in the community in which they live.
Okay. And it will be interesting to see what happens with that.
It will.
And a lot of things going on with the city. What would be your suggestion to residents for keeping up?
That's a great question. We always talk about and we blame the media for not being able to give us the information we want. And Carl, I commend you for always being the iron horse and the one to get the community information out there. But I certainly would suggest people, if they are online, to go to the city's website. I publish a weekly blog or a biweekly blog, depending on the topics that come out, to keep the community up to speed. So just go to wirapids.org, and then you can get access to my community update, it's called. Obviously, calling my office. Folks have questions. Certainly don't hesitate to reach out. And I'll give the phone number for those that are listening to this, 421-8216. Again, 421-8216. And if there's questions that folks have, especially because they weren't able to call in today, we want to address those. Send me an email. My email address is on the city website. Call an alderperson.
I was going to say, get to know your alderperson.
Absolutely. I think sometimes our alderpersons are busy. Many of them have full-time jobs, but engage with those folks. I always encourage them to get up to speed with the facts, so they're familiar with the correct information, not just based on, I heard this and this must be true. So therefore, I would certainly get in touch with all of us and follow the city on Facebook. The city's got a really robust Facebook page that our community media department handles and puts out information on a daily basis or multiple times a day. So if people are on Facebook, be sure to follow the city on Facebook.
Okay. And we'll keep you posted here as much as we can as well. Well, with that, sir, I thank you for your time and look forward to our next discussion next month.
All right, Carl, thank you, and thanks to the listeners.
And we want to thank Jesse from Wisconsin Rapids Community Media for being here as well, and thank the viewers who are watching this on Wisconsin Rapids Community Media's fine website or on your local public access channel. And that's going to do it for this edition of the Morning Magazine on AM 1320 and streaming live at WFHR.com.